All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I am Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy, the SGG of this horribly named podcast series, and the QA stands for question and answer. I like to make my weekly show an interactive discussion with an amazing group of folks already in the live chat. I'm seeing Rosted, Q3 Becker, I'm seeing Steve, Gary the Fireman, Matt Tyler, Sanjay at live. So I feel like we're already well into some good chatter back and forth, and it's why I like to host my show on a Monday. Gives us a little time to look back at the week of news that we've just hit. Maybe there was some breaking news over the weekend, and we can spend some time. We can spend a little time getting our feels sorted for what's going on in the world of tech, technology, tech politics, and gaming. I have to throw a couple warnings. My setup is a little shaky right now. The Gadget Lab is gonna be moving soon, and I'm putting together sort of a look at what's gonna happen on the Patreon. We're just looking at moving, and my home office is gonna change, and so this is in a horrible state of disarray right now, while I think I'm also suffering a few equipment failures. My sound card burned out recently. I should say my audio interface, that's getting replaced. I'm on a sort of makeshift solution right now. And then also I think my video capture card might be slowly dying also. So if I suddenly freeze in the middle of this broadcast or the mic starts really wigging out, I won't know, but someone in the live chat tell me, and we'll be able to move on from there. But yeah, it's all kinds of excitement here. Lots of high stress, high tension. Moves are terrible and awful, and I hate them. But we've got, there are things we have to do for schools and kids and all that fun stuff. So yes, that is the at home rambling nonsense of what's going on in the life of Mr. Gadget Guy. I want to try and blitz through some housekeeping here. Oh, and I'm sorry. At one point, I might need to jump out of this stream. Ricky, the YouTube tech guy, is heading up to Samsung Unpacked. Definitely be on the lookout for his content. He's going to be covering that show. But I still have... Where is it? Did I put it over here? I have no idea where I put it. I think it's over on the table behind me. But I still have his iPhone, and he still has my LG G8X. And so he might literally be driving up to my place as we speak to trade phones so that he can then drive up to Samsung Unpacked. So if I get the text, I might have to scramble downstairs really quickly and swap phones with him. I'm wrapping up all of my iPhone videos. Like, again, whenever I get a phone for a very short period of time, I've got to front load all of that use, and then I can put my videos together. So I'm gonna have a pretty long iPhone review, and then also the iPhone camera deep dive. But I needed to shoot all of that ahead of time with all of the B-roll and all of the camera samples. And now that I'm through that process, it's been a little bit more than a month that I've really been sort of swapping that phone back and forth with my other daily drivers. I'm gonna be happy to get my LG back. I've been missing my LG G8X. So I might have to make just another little "it's returned to me" video when that happens. So yes, as Steve points out in the chat, overall, new stuff is happening. And I wish I had like rainbow effects. Bling! It's going to be all new and shiny and awesome. So let's get into some actual housekeeping. All of the stories that we're going to be talking about this week, in addition to the stories that I published last week, everything can be found on SomeGadgetGuy.com, and I'll be putting links in the live chat. Also, you can hit the show notes for all of the content that we're going to be discussing. But for some Gary the Fireman is saying 7 minutes. So what is it, 9:05 in the a.m.? I'm going to turn down my mic just a little. Like, my levels are pretty good for my home. Okay, so yeah, that looks a little better for the stream. My software was saying I was peaking. Someone let me know if this is sounding funky on your end. I can't tell anymore. Live streaming is such a head trip when you're trying to put together a show, host the show, talk, look at everything that's going on, screen share stuff, and then also you don't get a direct audio feed for what you sound like. And from Roth Sothi. Oh, hey, finally got to catch you live. Old fan of your Nokia-related videos on YouTube. Well, thanks for dropping by, and thanks for checking it out. I missed covering Nokia and Windows phones, so those were happier days. Okay, where are we? 9:06. I've got one. Matt Tyler saying 9 minutes and 54.2 seconds. And Gary the Fireman is saying 7 minutes. So let's see if we can get through housekeeping. And I'm shooting for under 10. That's my goal. Probably not going to happen. Okay. Shifting over into screen share immediately. Number one with a bullet. Over the weekends, I think I'm going to be putting audio gadgets, the reviews for those, as my weekend feature. So a headphone review, a microphone review. I think I'm going to focus that for weekend viewing. And the second product that I've put out as just one of these Saturday, Sunday reviews, the Blonde BL03, $30 in-ear monitor style single driver headphones. Beautiful casing. I mean, I don't think aesthetics are as important as sound quality, but gosh darn, these are some of the most gorgeous liquid metal looking earbuds I've ever held. So if the aesthetics matter to you, these are highly, highly regarded. And then also, considering they're $30, I think with a few caveats, they're very high quality audio fidelity products. But I've got a whole review on that, so you can see what some of my reservations were. Blonde BL03. These are getting really hyped in that earbud headphone market right now. And I'm not entirely sure I buy the hype out of the box, but I definitely hear a lot of potential. Okay. Moving right along, the next video in the hashtag 2020 hearing campaign is out and ready for your consumption. And I just wanted to kind of dispel a few myths that people might have about setting a safe volume level for your headphones. I think a lot of consumers care about this. I think a lot of them are paying attention. It's just you hear things like, oh, well, I never set my headphones above half. Which isn't necessary. I mean, that's a good habit to get into. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying there are some physics and electrical engineering issues where that might not really be a safe limit. Even we can't really trust the volume slider on a smartphone or on a laptop. Every gadget has a different amp, and every amp is capable of putting out a different amount of acoustic force. So I've got a video trying to sum that up, and I really tried not to hit too much of the math. If you want me to, I can back up this work with physics, and like I said, like electrical resistance. You start talking ohms, that has a huge play on what's actually making it to your ear. But in a very general sense, to start off some of these topics, I'm trying to start fairly broad in ways that consumers can kind of access this information and it's not so overwhelming with the math and the science. And audiophiles suck. You know, like every time you get that like upper tier gatekeeper kind of conversation about a topic, even when we're passionate about it, sometimes we can be very off-putting. So this is another attempt at trying to dispel some of those myths to prevent people from forming some bad habits. I only turn it up to half. Well, depending on what phone you have, half might be blowing your ears out. Also, depending on what headphones you use, 90% might be too low, you know, for the gadget that you're listening to. So you can catch that, SomeGadgetGuy.com. And lastly, I have to say, there are some times where the YouTube audience, the YouTube commenting audience, takes me by surprise in a good way. I took the news of Blackberry leaving the smartphone market harder than I thought I would. I think a lot of us could see the writing on the wall. You know, from the Blackberry Key 2 till today, very little news, no leaks, no rumors, anything that we could sort of sink our teeth into with this partnership, BlackBerry partnering up with TCL. as an ODM. But when you actually get that final announcement, and then it came in a tweet. I mean, if you caught the show last week, I mean, this was breaking news last week, and I was still trying to wrap my brain around it. And as soon as we were off camera, I still needed to do another, multi-minute editorial on just sorting out how I feel about this market. So rather than playing the same, oh, BlackBerry's dead and they didn't innovate and they didn't do this and they didn't give people what they wanted and I would never buy one because it's not like a popular phone, I felt like this was a more important opportunity to talk about media literacy. And I feel like in all of our infotainment and entertainment markets, I think it's important to keep bringing up the situations we face with algorithms managing our content in our feeds, Facebook and YouTube using software to try and keep you on their platform longer, not necessarily giving you the content that you say you want, but trying to game the psychology of the viewer for their own benefit. And I think that has had a very stark impact on the homegrown grassroots gadget commentary landscape. And if something is not SEO economically popular immediately out of the box, it's starting to influence the tone of the reviews coming forward. So I shared my thoughts on that, and I was really expecting a lot more pushback. But I'm very thankful. I'm very grateful that it seems the audience that I'm building on my YouTube channel is at least trying to join me on some of these broader conversations. I'm still seeing a lot of, I'm putting out an iPhone review soon. I know I'm going to get pushback and a lot of hate on my thoughts regarding a $1,300 smartphone. And by what threshold we should rank and grade that smartphone for being so expensive. But on this video, it really did seem that most of the people coming to comment were kind of as bummed out and as nonplussed as I was. Like, I don't really know fully how I feel about a company like BlackBerry leaving this market again, but like it didn't sit well. And I feel a lot of people came to share those kinds of thoughts too. And so it's just increasingly, it's kind of reinforcing the idea that spending this little bit of extra time on some of these less popular, commercially popular brands, that there's an audience of people out there that don't seem to get that kind of commentary. Again, I'm pointing to two very popular Android blogs that had similar things to say about LG and Sony. Like, oh, well, no one comes to read LG articles on our site. They get no traffic. And then you go and you read through all of the articles that they post, and it's like article after article after video of just slamming the brand. They can't do anything right. Everything they do is garbage. They don't innovate. They're too expensive. And then you put out a video, like if I put out a video on a Sony and I say, hey, look, these are some of the compromises, but these are the things that were unique and different, and I kind of enjoyed it. And not even as like this is the best phone ever, you should go and buy one. Man, Sony fans are thirsty. Sony fans are thirsty for any reasonable conversation about the products they like. So it's just a shame. It's a shame because I feel like there are these lesser heard voices in the tech conversation that kind of gets steamrolled on a lot of this stuff. So those are the major videos, the major productions that I put out on SomeGadgetGuy.com. The other thing, I got to do a guest appearance on another podcast. One of the reasons why I think my capture card is dying on me, I joined the guys on Tech Down Over. They're on the RelateCasts podcast network. I guess you could call it a podcast network. They have a couple different shows. But it's just such a bummer that while I was in the middle of this conversation, we were trying to talk about my hashtag 2020 hearing campaign. We always kind of go through some really weird tangents on health and tech and politics. My camera just kept freezing and kept locking up, and I couldn't tell if it was Skype, if it was the connection, maybe my router was being funky, but it only seemed to reset unplugging and plugging in my Aja. I have this little Aja U-tap. So I'm hoping this stream survives. We'll see. But if you just want to listen to an interesting conversation that goes through some very odd territory, I'll have a link in the show notes for that too. So Tech Down Over. I like those guys. They're charmingly older gentlemen that, you know, kind of have a get off my lawn look at technology, and they're more focused on camera and audio gear, like professional grade production kit. But they like to have me on just to say, hey, what's up? This is what you can do on a phone from time to time. Oh, and DKRY, thanks for the 1,000 sparks on Mixer. I'm happy. My Mixer has been a little flaky too. Everything's super flaky in the Gadget Lab right now. Super frustrating. So I got a couple comments here. That's the end of housekeeping. 9:16. I think I hit us pretty close to 10 minutes. But from Roth, this is the first I've ever heard of the Blonde brand. I wonder what else they make. Rumors are pointing to a new set of earbuds coming out soon from Blonde. Matt Tyler, all these amazing headphones around and hardly any jacks left to plug them into. Well, the second half of the podcast is our gadget block, and we've got some LG news to talk about. So at least one more phone for one more year is going to have that precious, beautiful headphone jack that should never have been removed from our phones. Shaka Zulu, I have a pair of Blonde 03 myself. Very impressed at $30, and a single driver tuning, which I think offers a very interesting counterpoint against some of the other like multi-driver, hyper colorful earbuds in this Chinese hi-fi space. And Shaka Zulu also seconding this. My advice is to get extra tips and a cable. I did not play with a replacement cable on the Blonde, and I really should start looking at that a bit more in the reviews, if only just to show off, you know, you can replace the cable. I keep running into this where I'm shooting video so fast that when I'm pulling the cable and plugging them back in, I did this, what else did I do this with? I think I did it to the SomeGadgetGuy too, where I accidentally plugged left channel back against the right channel, so I swapped the drivers on the wrong cable just for the photography. I was listening to them correctly. But you're trying to do macro shots and you're trying to line up your camera and you're working way faster than you should as a solo producer. And then on this one, I think I actually just had the cable flipped. So it was, you know, left channel on the left cable, but the poles were reversed. I didn't even know how I pulled that off. So again, not a great look for me. I do know what I'm doing. I'm just moving way too fast to do the proper correction checking. So you can go and make fun of me on that video too. You probably should. Matt Tyler saying Blackberry will be back. Someone will buy them and produce a phone one day. There is a mid-ranger brand in India that licenses the Blackberry name, but it's a $350 Snapdragon 660 slab. It's not really very unique. So I'm hoping someone decides to take up the cause of a new Passport, a new Priv, something with a keyboard. There's a tiny community out there. They are not large. But if you were to go in there with the right niche, the right mid-range chipset to focus on battery life, and then a good hardware keyboard, those consumers would absolutely gobble it up. It's just getting through some of the messaging and getting around the tech elite gatekeepers that are going to tell everyone to go and buy a Samsung and an Apple. There is a group of people out there that are underserved. And if you can be the king of that niche, you should do it. And Goran Petrovic, I just washed my ATH earphones. They're alive. Oh man, this is so hard doing headphone and earbud reviews because ears are filthy. The human body is super gross. And I have psoriasis, so my scarring goes into my ear canal. So I get a double whammy of like skin and earwax. So revolting. I hope you were eating lunch while I just described that, because it's like every time I'm going through, I'm trying to detail the crap out of these earphones, literally and figuratively. It's so flippin' gross. All right, let's get into some news. We start every week with top news topics. If there is a tech and politics story that I think is worth following up on. If I see FCC in some headlines, I feel like that's something we still, as the gadget geeks out there, should have on our radar. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it's kind of a disappointing story, but a couple months back, we talked about the efforts at the federal level to get courts to re-examine, to rehear the case on the FCC repealing net neutrality. I've got the link down in the show notes in the live chat here. Coming by way of Gadget, written up by Christine Fisher, U.S. appeals court will not rule on repealing net neutrality laws. A U.S. appeals court said it will not reconsider an October ruling that upheld the repeal of net neutrality laws, Reuters reports. Tech and advocacy groups, along with 15 states, had requested that the ruling be reconsidered. The appeals court decision marks another win for the FCC and allows the repeal of net neutrality laws to stand. I know I have a regional and politically diverse audience of people that will tune into this podcast. And I know of a handful, more than a handful of folks disagree with my sort of left-leaning stance on regulatory policy like net neutrality. But if you're pro-business in this space, not having a loose, fairly toothless federal standard for companies to fall in line with means that every single state in the United States is going to have different policy. We can look to the coasts as probably the leading industries and the leading areas of tech policy now. California's net neutrality and privacy bill, the privacy bill that just recently went up, is already having huge ramifications worldwide. It was because of California's privacy law that Samsung had to disclose they were selling your information in Samsung Pay, right? Your purchasing and transactions, they didn't have to tell you that that private data of yours was being sort of bulked in aggregate and sold off to marketers. California, because you have to do business with California, it is easier to let California write the rule than to try and, if a phone's in California, then we'll disclose it. But then if the phone moves to Arizona, they don't care. So we'll hide that setting. That's not how this works. So if you care about businesses not getting regulated to death, it makes so much more sense to have one overall umbrella federal standard that then sort of overrides the compliance or the wishes of every single little individual state. We don't have that, and the FCC doesn't seem interested in doing their job, and that's disappointing. It's also disappointing that because of the way that tech and politics intermingle, legally, and I think the courts actually have the right take on this. It's not worth re-deliberating this situation over and over and over again. What's going to change is if Trump is voted out of office, which again, it's kind of a coin flip right now, seeing how the Democrats are performing. We'll get a different head of the FCC if a Democrat is in place, and we're going to go through this whole conversation again. This type of instability in the politics side of this conversation is terrible for businesses. And to lock it down means that we need to have a federal standard. If the federal standard is the OIO, that is so much better for companies than if cranky Californian politicians are writing much more punitive laws. From Andy, we're probably getting close to hearing the, well, it hasn't ruined anything yet justifications if it hasn't started already. And that's Edgit Pie's big argument. We talked about Edgit Pie finally speaking at a CES. And his big argument was, all of the stuff that Obama did, we're taking credit for, and what we've done hasn't ruined the internet because you can still roast me in tasty memes. And that's not a germane summation of what's happened in technology since removing this federal standard. From Shaka Zulu, it's Bernie versus Trump. Okay, I don't want to get too deep into politics. This is what's so crazy about the Democrat race right now is Iowa was such a mess that anyone could really rise up at this point. It only takes one good moment for Elizabeth Warren or for Biden to push Buttigieg out of the way. This is what the circus, the dog and pony show, the exhausting years we spend over the minutia of drama politics and polling is completely unreflective of people actually walking into a polling center or to a caucus or to a primary and putting a check mark down. It's such bad theater at this point that it's not really worth investing in outside of really trying to look at what the policy is being promoted. Well, and Umbuk coronavirus is being bad. We're going to be talking about that in just a second here. Moving right along, I've got a pair of Apple stories. I'm not really trying to pick on Apple here. Apple is kind of on the brain because I'm finishing up my iPhone 11 Pro review. But these are, again, ongoing stories that we need to keep following up with. Out of all of the things that Apple has done from the corporate side, from the business side, this is one of the ones that I feel has been one of the worst anti-consumer policies that they used to have, that I feel like they didn't really face the appropriate corrective action for justice. And it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anywhere. This headline got a lot of traffic. Coming from BBC News, Apple fined for slowing down old iPhones. Let me drop this in the live chat here. So, is there a byline on this? Does the BBC really still not do bylines? I don't know who wrote this article up. Anyway, Apple has been fined 25 million euro for deliberately slowing down older iPhone models without making it clear to consumers. The fine was imposed by France's competition and fraud watchdog, the DGCCRF, which said consumers were not warned. In 2017, Apple confirmed that it did slow down some iPhones, but said it only did so to prolong the life of the devices. Apple said in a statement that it had resolved the issue with the watchdog. So there was this common idea from iPhone 3 on. Oh, every time I get a software update, my phone gets a little slower. And it was just kind of shrugged off as this like, okay, grandma, this anecdotal kind of experience. And then we found out, no, this was actually policy where because Apple was putting in these ridiculously tiny batteries in the iPhone, which when they were brand new were the right size to make sure the phone could last a full day of sort of average consumer use, that as the phone would age, the battery would degrade. And Apple's solution was to quietly, behind the scenes, throttle the CPU performance. And we'd get these sort of, again, anecdotal, I went and got my battery replaced and it feels like I have a brand new phone. And you kind of roll your eyes. That's not really how technology works. Oh, but no, that was exactly how Apple was making technology work. And so for years of this practice, instead of making it clear what the mechanism was at play, that performance could be restored with a much less expensive battery replacement than buying a whole new phone, and especially here in the United States where we're preconditioned to follow a 2-year upgrade cycle because of the carrier relationships, Apple significantly profited off of this behavior. When Apple offered cheap battery replacements as a mea culpa for this practice, they actually had to disclose in their quarterly stock reports and their quarterly earning reports that that program directly contributed to a huge drop, a statistically significant drop in iPhone sales. So I'm glad that local governments around the world are paying attention to the ramifications and the long-term ramifications of this business practice. But 25 million euro for an operating budget, the revenue that Apple generates every day, is basically just an encouragement to continue doing this business practice. It's barely a blip on Apple's spec sheets. It's barely a tax. And like, oh, we've sold billions of dollars of iPhones and iPads this year. 25 million? Well, okay, that's actually pretty good encouragement to continue doing this. And it's the same conversation I've been having with my family and friends. Now Apple tells you they do it, so it's not a bad thing anymore. But it's still getting that idea across, and how people don't believe you. At least now, there is a setting in the battery battery menu on an iPhone where you can look at the battery health. And you can tell them, hey, if this health is below 80%, your phone's going to start telling you it's not running at optimal conditions, and go and get a battery replacement. It might be $80, something like that. Your phone will start running like it did brand new. Well, no, I really think I should just get a new phone. What are you doing on your phone? Are you doing anything new with your phone? You just want the peace of mind of having a brand new gadget? That's a $700 purchase for you to do the exact same things on your phone. But that Apple marketing and that keeping up with the Joneses and that desire, like you get that dopamine hit when you take the new shiny out of the box, is so difficult to untangle. I'm running into this just a little bit. I had the sadness, the battery sadness. So for Apple making this claim, we've got to slow down your CPU. Your battery is a year and a half old. Got to start throttling you because we don't want you to have an unexpected shutdown. I'd like to just bring up as a comparison point. I have regularly in the past talked about how the Galaxy Note 4, this is maybe one of the best built phones of all time in terms of feature set, how far ahead of the curve it was, design, implementation, choice of materials. This is an amazing phone. I still regularly use this phone in part of my recording and streaming setup, especially for my teleprompter setup. I've got this cute little teleprompter and the phone slots in and the script is read off of the mirror. It's why I sort of vaguely don't make eye contact with people in my videos. This phone has been bulletproof up until about 2 weeks ago. Again, everything in the Gadget lab is falling apart. 2 weeks ago, the battery got down to 25% and the phone shut off. And it has never done that before. This is probably one of the most used phones of its era in my collection, and was still being used on an almost daily basis for a lot of low power but constant screen on time activity. From the Note 4 to today, this was the original battery in the phone, and I just had my first bad shutdown. Now, Samsung has also been accused of a similar CPU throttling for battery degradation, but I feel like Apple is maybe putting on a bit more of a protection show than they really need to. But anyway, if you've got a hookup on a good replacement battery for a Galaxy Note 4, I might take you up on it because I'd kind of like to keep this phone in operation because I love it so much. It is, again, Samsung's high point. Everything has been downhill for Samsung since then. Let me get this out of the way here. Speaking of overbuying, this is from Imbuk. Speaking of overbuying, I saw an old lady at Costco yesterday with an iPhone 11 Pro Max. I've talked about that on this podcast before. My immediate family, my parents, my brother, my sister, my brother-in-law, are all now flirting with mid-ranger and lower-cost brands. My mom's on a OnePlus. My dad was on a Pixel, but now he's on a really old Galaxy, and he's probably going to go back to a Pixel. My sister and her husband are both on Galaxy Pixel 3As. Like, the idea of spending more than $500 on a phone now just seems laughably silly to most of my immediate family. But I've got some extended family, some cousins, and an uncle. Man, they just cannot be seen with that cheap iPhone. So they needed the iPhone Pros, and they really wanted to make sure their investment would last. Which, it's not an investment, it's a phone. And that kind of mentality, again, Apple's really good at making this a fashion label, making this a fashion discussion. And I don't want to take anyone from you. You enjoy that? You want to spend your money that way? More power to you. But I think we've got some imaging problems in the world of tech. Blue Malicious. This is hilarious. The rough calculations I did the other day, it takes Apple 42 minutes to replace the money that fine takes away. Now, Blue Malicious, what I would ask is that 42 minutes to generate 25 million in revenue, or is that 25 million in profit? So if you can break that down for me, I would greatly appreciate it. LFA Reviews is in the live chat. I'm here, better late than never. Especially as I've been working the audio side of my tech channel. You should also definitely be following LFA, some of my absolute favorite headphone and true wireless reviews. He basically got me back into reviewing true wireless, so it's his fault I'm covering those types of products again. Goran Petrovic agreed about the Note 4, but I still can't forgive myself for skipping the M8 for the Galaxy Alpha. Now, you want to talk about nerdcore? My dad had a Galaxy Alpha and flipping loved that phone. He only replaced it when the Pixel 3 had just come out, and he got a Pixel 2 for super, super cheap. But man, that Alpha was such a pretty little phone. From Shaka Zulu, guys, I'm an iSheep. Please don't slap. And that's one of the other things that I kind of want to talk about for just a second before we move on to this next article. I feel like I need to bring this up regularly. The whole point of discussing these products with this kind of a critical eye is never to make a consumer feel bad for an individual product that they like. But we still have to discuss the operations of a multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar company. If we can't be critical of the super large mass of money making what is beholden to shareholders, we can't have a fair and honest discussion about what might be the right fit for consumers. I will make fun of YouTube commenters, but that's not the same as the people that are just out there buying iPhones, Galaxies, LGs, Motos, whatever as their daily driver kit, and just genuinely like their phones and want to get on with their lives. That's a completely different market demographic conversation. So I feel like there's some fairness in there to say, do svidanya, like whatever you want to use, go and use it. But I don't want to crouch that behind SEO metrics on YouTube so that I'm only talking about the most popular products for my, ad rates. Blue Malicious, only revenue, unfortunately, not sure on the profit side. I based on average 260 billion revenue each year. And Umbuk, when am I going to review the WF-1000XM3? I have so much backlogged. I'm probably not going to be adding anything too quickly to that. Let's get on to the next story here. I don't want to spend too much more time on the news block because we also have to cover just some of the MWC drama. But this is the other Apple story. I'm dropping the link in the live chat now. This is something I'm ill-equipped to test, and it seems like the way that we test it is problematic for consistently providing consumers good data. So I actually don't believe the headline is quite accurate here, which is why I'm trying to bring it up. This is coming by spectrum.ieee.org. A radio frequency exposure test finds an iPhone 11 Pro exceeds the FCC limits. This is written up by Michael Koziol. I have mispronounced your name. I am absolutely sure. Okay. From the article, a test by Penumbra Brands to measure how much radio frequency energy an iPhone 11 Pro gives off found that the phone emits more than twice the amount allowable by the U.S. Federal Communications Commission. The FCC measures The FCC measures exposure to RF energy as the amount of wireless power a person absorbs for each kilogram of their body. The agency calls this the specific absorption rate, or SAR, for a cell phone. The FCC's threshold of safe exposure is 1.6 watts per kilogram. Penumbra's test found that an iPhone 11 Pro emitted 3.8 watts per kilogram. The article goes, I really want people to read through this article, even though I feel like the headline isn't accurately describing The controversy of this testing, the article does a very good job of describing the issues at play. First, this testing protocol is woefully simplistic. You basically hold a phone radio next to a fluid at a certain distance, and then you put in temperature gauging equipment to see how much energy is being absorbed. The human body is not one consistent material. So that's already not exactly accurate a depiction of how much energy we absorb. But the FCC tests at something like 5 millimeters, which sounds pretty close, but a lot of our interactions with phones, as I'm rubbing a Galaxy Note 4 over my face, a lot of our interactions in using the device require the device to be even closer than 5 millimeters, and storing the device in a pocket is usually more like a 1 to 2 millimeter gap between you and the device. And then you have to take into account the various materials that radiation might be passing through. I wear denim, so I don't know if that has any kind of an impact on absorbing energy, or also maybe creating more of a hot spot, because we're concerned about cooking the human body, not necessarily radiation in some kind of science fiction nuclear mutant kind of way, but in creating trouble spots in the body that the body will overreact to, or in triggering the immune system. Well, we're absorbing radio frequency energy. We're also just absorbing pure heat a lot of the time. When we look at the chipset, the processor, the RAM, the screen, the battery, all of these components that heat up, and then you shove it in a pocket and it's directly against your skin. This is so much more complicated than it seems we currently test for. And this testing protocol was probably inadequate in the days of flip phones, but we've just sort of carried it over into the world of smartphones. Which means, unfortunately, we really won't have good data on this until we go through about 2 generations of consumers. And then we'll have a sense of, well, was there a health impact? Oh darn, way more cancer. Or, hey, no, everything was cool. You didn't have to be quite as, sort of antiseptically safe as you thought you were going to need to. So the testing protocol from Penumbra seems to be an outlier. But it's an outlier against a testing protocol which seems to be out of date and inadequate to properly describe modern technology use. The article's a head trip. I'm not sure how to feel about that. I'm starting an entire series of videos on my channel to discuss the impact of 10 years of digital audio players and smartphones on shockingly skyrocketing rates of hearing loss. We don't understand the full ramifications of this, and the scientific process demands time. But tech evolves faster than science can measure because we want to do a thorough job and get good data, not just clumsily stapled together reports from surveys over a population of people for a year. It's not really emblematic of what's really happening when we live our lives out of these gadgets. A little care, a little consideration. If you're worried about this stuff, you're probably already managing your behavior in a way that makes these products a little bit safer. Probably worth having those conversations with our family and friends and looking to the next generation of consumers to make sure they're building good habits, if only just to play the safety game. I don't love the FUD of headlines like this because it's pure clickbait. Not pure clickbait, it's clickbaity. It's clickbait adjacent. But the substance of the article is really what people need to pay attention to. Whether or not we can get more people to read the substance of the article is a completely different, scary consumer process. Goran Petrovic. And Goran Petrovic and I have had a few Twitter conversations on this. And again, it's just, I can comment on it, but it's not something I can adequately test. So I feel unequipped to properly join this conversation, except to point out the surveys and the testing that other outlets have done. iPhones are well known for their highest SAR among smartphones, always been like that. Huawei and Xiaomi joined them too. From Sanjay, according to GSM, Arena SAR value for iPhone 11 Pro Max is only 1.16. And I'd be curious to see if GSM Arena has their own testing protocol for that. Because a difference between 1.16 and 1.6 would be a pretty substantial difference in the impact on the human body. Oh, and this is actually another important point from Goran Petrovic. He says LG, HTC, and sometimes Samsung had the lowest SAR in flagship phones, not so much for the mid-range. And that, to me, is critical. We've said this before on numerous episodes of the podcast. The most vulnerable members of our society consistently get the shaft. They get the shaft for broadband deployment. They get the shaft for privacy and protection. They get the shaft for malware-infested devices, devices that fall apart more quickly, underpowered, harder to accomplish various tasks. And now they have less radiation shielding. That's a terrible look for our industry. Again, like, let's say 30 years from now, we do find out that this type of radiation absorption has some kind of an impact on the immune system or on cancer rates or on illness. And we're like, hey, sucks to be you, poor people. There isn't a good advocate for protecting people from shoddily built consumer electronics. And I need to chuckle with this idea because it also kind of makes me want to cry. Let me get this out of the way here. And get that out of the way there. From Steve, you're equipped to test audio output, not SAR output. And again, the testing protocol, I'm not even sure I would be able to contribute to this conversation. I'm not sure I could control for that. One more bit of news, and then we can get into the Reddit plug. This is another company. I'm kind of bummed out for the people attending MWC. It's nothing on the event organizers. It's nothing to do with the press that are going to check out this event. I'm taking sort of a year off from a ton of trade show activity. I even go to CES this year. I took my first break in a decade. I took my first break from CES. It's the only opportunity that people like us get to chat with our work friends. So it's kind of a bummer when you don't get to go. When you've gone to a trade show for a couple years, it's usually not the super exciting, oh my gosh, I get to see all these gadgets. It's, holy crap, I haven't seen this person in a year. And we talk all the time online and you comment on each other's videos and we tweet at each other. And I just want to go and grab a bourbon and hang out and just say, like, how are you? How are you doing? Let's get some food. So that's what I miss about hitting these trade shows. And that's what makes these trade shows so valuable, not just from the consumer perspective and making the content that people want to watch, but also just it replenishes you. It kind of recharges your batteries. It reminds you why you enjoy hanging out with this community. So there's an increasing list of companies for MWC that are scaling back their operations. The big headline for today, I think I only caught it this morning. What was it? Yeah, posted this morning from Katie Collins on CNET. Sony withdraws from MWC 2020 over coronavirus concerns. The Japanese tech giant joins an ever-growing list of companies opting out of the mobile show this year. So the big headlines. Sony just selected the whole article. Oh, let me drop this in the live chat too. Here's the link. Sony became the latest exhibitor to withdraw from Mobile World Congress on Monday, following in the footsteps of LG, Ericsson, Amazon, and Nvidia. The companies have all pulled out of the show, which is due to be held in Barcelona at the end of the month due to fears over coronavirus outbreak. In a statement, Sony said its press conference, where it's expected to show off its latest Xperia flagship, will go ahead as scheduled, but would now be live streamed via the internet. Quote, as we place the utmost importance on the safety and well-being of our customers, partners, media, and employees, we have taken the difficult decision to withdraw from exhibiting and participating at MWC 2020 in Barcelona, Spain. And that's just really sad. Trade shows are having a difficult time evolving into the 21st century. It used to be the way you would get all the press together, so that was the best chance you had at breaking through some of the trade show noise if your product was a hit. Increasingly, companies like Samsung, Apple, Nintendo, I think does a really good job of this, have shown the press and have shown consumers that you don't really need the infrastructure of a mega show to highlight and get press on your product. If you roll your own, like people are going to be talking about Samsung Unpacked tomorrow. That's ahead of MWC, and it drove me nuts while I was at Pocket Now that we'd have to flip those back to back. There's a Samsung Unpacked, and then we immediately have to jump into MWC coverage. Why can't Samsung just go to MWC like everyone else? But it's because it works for them. It's because they can dump a ton of money into that conversation and have their own show ahead of the main show and miss all of the competition. You know, they get to occupy the news feed for a couple days. So we're seeing the ramifications of this. In a global society with a lot of travel, when a health concern breaks out, you know, I got horrifically sick at a CES several years back. Again, we had a funky flu that wasn't a part of the flu shot, the flu vaccine that year. I drove home from Vegas with a 104-degree temperature. I mean, you know, when it hits you and when it messes you up, it messes you up bad. So this can't be a decision taken lightly. You know, I kind of tweeted the same thing when LG announced that they were largely pulling out of the show and just going to like private meetings. I think they're still going to be running a booth, but they're not going to have the same level of activity that they've had in years past. That's a huge hit for their PR teams. That money's already been spent. That messaging has already been agreed on. The events were already tackled. The influencers were already contacted. So it's a brutal loss for that side of the telecommunications industry, for that side of the consumer electronics industry, and it's just a bummer. But yeah, so LG, Ericsson, Amazon, Nvidia, Sony all pulled out completely. I've gotten word that a couple other companies are slow playing. Like Samsung is still going to have a presence at MWC, but it sounds like it's going to be greatly reduced. There could be some other conversation. I'm technically under embargo on a product that I can't name the manufacturer, but they recently put out a statement saying that they would probably be in a reduced capacity for MWC. And when trade shows are already at their most vulnerable, this is just a rough spot for everyone to be in. I'm happy. I'm happy they're taking the more responsible approach, but it's just a bummer, especially a bummer for the people that are going. So it's just sad. Matt Tyler, whoa, the cost for creators now to travel all over for these company separate events is going to be tough. It's super tough. Like, yeah. Again, one of the reasons why I'm kind of taking a break from covering trade shows, which actually has kind of been a 2-year break for some of the mega shows, is like international travel, getting hotels. Back in the day, if I drove out to CES, a couple CES videos would almost pay for the entire trip, and it looked good for the channel, and it was good relationship building stuff. Now it's an economic loss. Like driving up to Unpacked will not recoup on my channel. It won't. I mean, I could break some crazy awesome news, get thousands and thousands of video views. Wouldn't even come close to covering a flight, like basically the same as bus fare if you're going from LA to San Francisco. So not a great ROI for us solo producers. And from Roth, yeah, Nintendo likes to do their own thing during E3 and throughout the year with their Nintendo Direct streams, which has been deemed successful ever since. And also, Microsoft and Sony not playing with E3 like they used to. Blue Malicious, isn't MWC like €700 to attend? I think it is if you're just a general attendee. Usually, for someone like me, we go as part of a press team, and a press badge is usually free. So the costs for that aren't too bad. But we're not going for a day. We usually have to go several days in advance to cover pre-briefings. Then you want to cover the main excitement of the show floor, catch any companies that you might not have been able to get a pre-brief for, find accommodations where you can upload data. The last time I did MWC, it was Jaime and me in an Airbnb that had a 1 megabit per second upload over horrifically shoddy DSL. And you can't get a sense of that on Airbnb because everyone says, oh, we have high-speed internet, but you don't. It was super, super bad. So we were scrambling, like trying to hit press rooms and trying to hit other, like we were, at one point I was war driving in a cab looking for Wi-Fi that I could piggyback on just to get a video up. And the stress of that, I don't really need. But then you look at the entire presentation, the few sponsorships that we got, the amount of time, money, and effort in covering all that stuff, and I don't even know that it was a wash. It was probably a loss for Pocket Now the last year we covered MWC. LFA reviews, I'm the ROI for showing up in San Francisco. It's like, LFA could probably just walk to Samsung Unpacked and be like, yo, what's up? Hook me up with a phone. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break from the news. We're going to transition over into the Gadget blog, but this is the part of the show where I want to plug the subreddit. Every podcast has a subreddit. Some subreddits are really cool link aggregators to talk about news topics. Some subreddits are just, hey, we're fans of this show, so we're going to tell the producer of the show how cool we think they are. This podcast, the podcast that you're streaming or listening to right now, has a subreddit too. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. I have problems with the way that Facebook and YouTube manage our subscription feeds for the content we say we want to watch. And it's difficult because only the most popular types of videos get promoted heavily. So it becomes this obnoxious echo chamber of content. So I'm trying to find ways to help combat that and finding ways to engage with new content producers, content creators that just deserve more attention, and then also making that a community project. My subreddit is not about me. Sometimes I show up on my subreddit. It's a bit more infrequent than you'd think it would be. So reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. This is becoming an increasingly cool place to participate and to find new content that you might not have been otherwise exposed to through search. These are the top stories voted up this last week. Let me get the screen share on here. Gary Explains, a very regular contributor, often in the top 5, very frequently in the top 3. He's got a video on incredibly fast graphene battery power bank. Gary Explains. 137,000 subscribers. His channel's growing phenomenally well. But when Gary explains something, it's because it's worth explaining. You know what you will never see on Gary Explains is USB plug explained. You plug it into a computer. Smash that bell icon. He's done deep dives on Raspberry Pis, on mobile computing chipsets. Like, if you really do care about good information and responsible reporting for the types of gadgets and electronics that we use, Gary Explains, always highly recommended. The number 2 spot is taken up by some dork in a hat. Super punchable face. I need some good hashtag punchable faces. Is this nerd whining about Blackberry going away? Oh, Blackberry leaves the smartphone market. Here's some rambling thoughts on how we review gadgets. In the number 2 spot, so that was pretty cool. Hashtag some punchable face guy coming from Mbuk. Perfect. And then, wrapping up the number 3, nothing but tech, MBTY88, living with the Samsung Galaxy A20. This is something I want to do on my channel too. I really need to be spending more time this year with some of the mid-ranger and entry-level phones out there. We're going to talk about the Z Flip and a little bit of time on Unpacked, I'm increasingly getting less and less excited at that upper tier of super premium priced smartphones, and the actual daily user experience of some of these $200 to $400 phones is phenomenally good. And I really need to be spending a bit more time on my own channel sharing that kind of story, sharing that kind of conversation. But we've got a great video here on the A20. And I bet you pretty solid that her video on this is probably not tracking as well as it probably should. And I very much enjoy her content. Rounding out the top 5, we've got the True Wireless Showdown. One more True Wireless ANC versus Sony WF-1000XM3 versus the Soundcore Liberty 2 LFA reviews. I need a good stab every time I like bromance my appreciation for LFA's channel, like brum 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 brum. Wah 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 wah. No, not wah 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 wah. I'll work on it. I need a good audio stab for LFA's channel because I love his channel. But yeah, in the number 4 spot, his review on some awesome True Wireless gear. I spent some time with the One More ANCs. I still do want to get my hands on those XM3s, but those Liberty 2s look phenomenal, so you can check that out. And then lastly, in the top 5 position, we've got Bored at Work, doing some game streaming on GeForce Now, 1080p, 60 frame per second game streaming. His thoughts on how this is better than Stadia and showing off some awesome gameplay. So the future is probably going to be streaming. You'll want to check out what you can do with different devices. You know, where you can play your games, how you can play your games. You know, the Netflix of gaming idea is pretty much already here. And if you can benefit from some decent bandwidth, it's getting really good. It's getting really good. From Mbuk, want to let you borrow my XM3s. Oh, you don't want to? Well, if you do, I'll buy some replacement tips so that my biology does not impact your gadget. In book, LFA puts the wholesome in to wholesome. It's a good joke. It needs a little polishing. And Boang Byte, GeForce Now with RTX, big blinky eye emoticons. And again, some of the recent DLSS updates, once games start getting patched for that, ray tracing is gonna blow up. The frame rates on the beautiful lighting effects, when we turned on DLSS on Wolfenstein, we were getting a faster frame rate with DLSS RTX on than we were with RTX off. So it's getting real good. And from Roth, I forgot Stadia even existed. I'm worried, personally, Roth, that Google might have forgotten that Stadia still exists. So yes, reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. We're getting more and more people sharing new content. We absolutely still need your participation. Those upvotes, comments, interacting with this content is super critical. And the more that this channel grows, we pick up a few new members, a few more subscribers every week. The more that this grows, the better potential it has to influence larger subreddits. So if something blows up here, it gets cross-posted to our Android or our Apple, a much bigger subreddit. That can have a huge impact on a content creator that you like, and that helps guarantee that that creator is putting out more content for you to watch. Just watching a video, a passive view, going, that was neat, I hope they make more stuff, is not enough these days. Having some kind of engaged interaction is what the creator needs to know that they can keep going with this and to keep making cool stuff. And that's what we want. We want more cool stuff to watch. So reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles is my attempt to help contribute to the community. And I hope you'll check it out. And I hope you'll participate because there's some really good stuff there. All right, that's the Reddit plug. I want to get into, let me get this out of the way here. I want to get into the Gadget block. There was, last night, the Academy Awards, kind of an awkward show. They're doing this no host thing where they bring out someone kind of famous to introduce someone more famous to then announce the award for someone even more famous so that they can go up to the stage and get their award. A few really awkward transitions too, where someone would come out and sing a song, but with no explanation as to why they were there. Sometimes it was because that was an Academy Award nominated soundtrack song, and sometimes it was just because they seemed cool. They did a whole segment, like a mashup of most iconic songs in film history, and at the end, they end with Eminem from 8 Mile, and then he's on stage performing. It wasn't like the 20th anniversary of 8 Mile or anything specific. It was just, hey, Eminem didn't have anything to do on a Sunday. And you're like, I understand the link, but super weird transition. So anyway, it's still a regular pastime in our household. My wife and I, we came out of casting, so the Oscars used to be our Super Bowl in the world of production in Hollywood, but you know, it is what it is. So 2 things happened. I'm not really going to spend any time on the people who were, making fun of Apple for having crappy keyboards. Maybe the WGA, the Writers Guild, should get after Apple to fix their terrible Mac keyboards. But one of the things that got a lot of buzz, breathlessly exploding all over the internet, the dozens and dozens of tech blogs that rushed to their WordPress templates to write about how Samsung showed the Galaxy Z Flip during the Oscars. It's just such a critical piece of news. We knew the phone was coming for Unpacked, but they showed it. So, I mean, I get it. It's Samsung, high SEO, you get a lot of readership on that. But it was hilarious. Like, when I was trying to pull the article, like the link that I was going to use, you do a search for a Z Flip and Oscars in like Google News or in Bing News or whatever, and it's just like same headline. It goes for like 2 pages of like people tripping over themselves to share the same news about a commercial during the Oscars. So, Steve Q3 Becker, an ad during the Oscars? Faints. So yeah, here's the CNET article. And again, it's like coming by way of MSN. This is like the one that I really tried to find some reasonable link to put in the show notes. Daniel Van Boom, which is a badass last name. Samsung shows Galaxy Z Flip phone during Oscars. We've heard rumors and seen the links, but on Sunday, Samsung showed off its Galaxy Z Flip phone officially for the first time at the Academy Awards of all places. An ad playing early in the Oscars night showed the Galaxy Z Flip in action, though it didn't actually name the phone, folding like Moto's new RAZR, but was mostly a teaser for Unpacked, Samsung's New York launch for the phone that'll take place on Tuesday. I'm not going to play the video. Actually, I've got some videos lined up, but I get into weird YouTube territory when I screen share playing a video. But they've got some screen grabs here from the commercial. Everyone's trying to... It was 15 seconds of computer animated Galaxy Z Flips. So, I mean, not even like a real phone being held by a human hand, but, screen images were simulated, as you can see in this screen grab of the commercial here. Everyone's trying to find like what was Samsung really trying to show us? What's going to be this new hot technology? So one of the things that they're really trying to hype, not Samsung, just the people writing these articles, is that the phone's going to have a selfie camera and you can prop up the screen for video calls. Whoa, that's super amazing. I better buy a really expensive, fragile folding phone so that I can have a half window video call where I don't have to hold the phone with my hands. I mean, I've never been able to prop up a phone to do a video call or use a tablet or anything. So that's a little bit handy. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I do like the dual screen on the LG G8X because you can prop up a full phone screen. And again, if you want to do a video call, like you can put the dual screen on the bottom and prop up the main phone for the selfie camera. And it's kind of handy. But this is the same thing. Like I'm running into this critical old man gadget reviewer crisis on what do folding phones solve in the current smartphone usage situation that we're going to be looking at balancing. We're going to be looking at the compromises of how fragile, how much less durable these devices are against what novelty they might bring. So I'm very positive on folding and bending screen tech. I'm just not sure our phones are going to be the killer solution for this. We put our smartphones through so much abuse now, and we want them to last for 2+ years. The average smartphone ownership length of time is almost 3 years now. And I kind of feel like this is a cynical way at making us flip our phones more aggressively because they're more fragile. We just expect that those plastic screens or those tiny, thin, ultra glass screens are going to break more readily. The hinges are more complicated. Everything has to be kind of designed to this small, pocketable situation, but we also have to have separate batteries in each part of the component, so that's twice as much stuff to burn out. I'm just not feeling it. So I know this is going to be a huge talking point. Tomorrow, Samsung Unpacked, people will be blitzing the headlines. One of the things we used to do with Pocket Now was like you'd have someone just doing screen grabs of the event, putting those photos up into a shared folder. If someone was there at the event, they'd be taking photos and videos, samples of the event, uploading that into some kind of shared folder. And then it was a team of writers. Unfortunately, Jules often got tasked with this, where he would just have to write these sort of useless, short, repetitive articles. Samsung says that this phone will do this. And then you'd have like a screen grab and then like 2 paragraphs of text. Publish. Samsung says the Note's going to be capable of that. And like a photo and like 2 paragraphs of text. And you just bombard the feeds out there, hoping that your regurgitation of the information that Samsung had is somehow going to rise above everyone else's regurgitation of the same information. So, it's a funny kind of commentary on the state of gadget reviewing that this was just so breathlessly reported on. And basically because they paid for the ad time during the Academy Awards. Oh, Tech Lovin' Mama's in the live chat. She was late. Everyone say, hey, Tech Lovin' Mama. She's super fun. Give her a follow. She was just recently on the Gadget Chats podcast. If you want to check out some of her commentary, she's good people. Steve has a very good point about a top channel for tech reviews, and how the tone of those reviews changes based on the popularity of the gadgets that he's reviewing. So you might want to check out Steve's Q3 Becker if you want to check out his sort of market commentary on gadget reviews. Boing Bite. Old man yelled at folding devices. More at 11. From Dammit Adrian, like you say, Juan, first gen, they need to work out all the kinks. Then by year 3, they should get it right. If it's not like 3D tech and just vanish, because honestly, we don't need it. But tech companies are just throwing spaghetti and seeing what sticks. I can't remember who did it. I want to say it was TechAltar. Probably wasn't TechAltar, but someone broke down this sort of really kind of insightful look at the various technology groups within major corporations, and that Samsung was way ahead of the curve on OLED displays. AMOLEDs were their bread and butter, and they did it better than anyone else. As we've gotten just a bit more competition from some Japanese manufacturers, the P-OLED team at LG has gotten much better, way faster than I think anyone expected them to. Samsung's investment is now starting to... The profit Samsung is making off of their investment in AMOLED and being the only game in town is starting to dwindle. So they're looking at what's the next display technology that's going to explode in the consumer space to justify ever-increasing profits that their shareholders demand. And that's why I think Samsung kind of rushed the Galaxy Fold as an actual consumer device. My feeling was the Fold should have always been a closed beta. Kind of like Google Glass. The Google Glass Explorer program. We're going to put these devices into real people's hands, but in a very limited capacity to get feedback. But we're going to make this public because we want to get people's thoughts on this. We want to see these things out in the real world, not just sort of shrouded by Samsung employees trying to sneak it out of the way. But Samsung is also facing insane competition in the space where everyone is also working on similar folding, bending, super thin panel OLEDs. So their initial investment is not going to pay off for folding displays like their investment for AMOLED did back in the day. That's going to be if they even have a lead for a consumer-facing product to sell, that lead's going to be much, much shorter. LG is going to be right on their heels. Japanese display manufacturers are going to be right on their heels. Chinese display manufacturers are going to be immediately on their heels. So Samsung really has to try and find a way to make this sexy, make this cool, and get that money to pay off the investment in the R&D as aggressively as possible. And I don't think they're ready yet. Or at least, I don't think this is the right application. This killer app, maybe it's for, morphing consoles in automobiles. Maybe it's for accessibility issues for people with vision problems. They need like tactile surfaces and you can kind of bend and morph through this stuff. But what we're going to get first are pretty flashy, fragile things that are going to be more expensive than competing devices. And then hopefully they become cool. I don't know. I'm thinking by 2022, maybe this is kind of mainstreamed enough that consumers are also used to the compromises. We'll have to see. But I'll be very curious to see, can you even game on a Galaxy Z Flip? Because if the screen is fragile, I play a lot of dual stick shooters where I'm really digging into the display. I'm not sure this is going to hold up for anything like that at all. Goran Petrovic. It's interesting. You never see folding phones in futuristic movies and series. I agree with them. That's funny. All right. From one folding phone to another folding phone, I feel like Motorola has actually has actually done a pretty good job of trying to properly condition consumers for the potential fragility of folding phones. But it's still an uphill climb, especially from a manufacturer which does not have the advertising budget of Apple or Samsung. I actually feel like the Moto RAZR will probably get a bump from the Galaxy Z Flip and from some of the coverage there, as I'll be shocked if Samsung has magically found a way to buffer all of the issues in durability. But the Motorola RAZR, similar situation. We've got a bendy plastic screen. And so recently there was news about the worry, the issues surrounding the manufacturing, that this was going to be a more fragile phone than even the Galaxy Fold. The hinges on the Galaxy Fold are amazing. The issue that CNET found was the folding mechanism being too fragile for even basic daily driver use. So here, I'm going to go ahead and play a part of this video, even though it's probably going to mess up my YouTube channel here. But this is the CNET ratcheting folding test robot. And it basically went through, I think, 27,000 activations, folding and unfolding this device. Now, I don't think CNET has a good test rig here. I think this is a very poor way to test how the Motorola RAZR would actually be operated out in the wild. The arms, let me see if I can get the top down. The arms don't fully close the phone, so the spring in the hinge. Let me see if I can get another longer top-down look. But the screen, the way that the hinge actually closes is never fully collapsed, and the screen isn't. When you open a flip phone, you don't pull the pieces open to its maximum. I don't know if I still have one here on my desk. I had oh no, it's way over there. I'm gonna leave it over there. You don't pull with full force to the full range of the hinge. You push in a thumb and you flip it open, and the hinge is responsible for completing the action of the hinge. I guarantee you that a Motorola RAZR is gonna be phenomenally more fragile than a standard slab candy bar phone. No one is claiming that this thing might approach regular phone use. But I also have a big problem with the way that CNET's articulated arms are constantly ratcheting against a minimum, not a completed, hinge activation. It stops before the phone is fully opened, and it can't fully collapse the phone, so it's overworking the middle part of the hinge screen. I think this is somewhat irresponsible. I think this is, again, we're going to talk about fear and uncertainty and doubt. They get to have some cool headline with gadget destruction porn, and it in no way, I feel, resembles what the actual use of that gadget will be when it's in a human being's hands. So to reply, and again, now we have to play this back and forth game. Motorola put out this video, we talked about it a while back, bumps and lumps in the screen, and trying to mitigate some of the concerns that people might have with a bending plastic screen. So Motorola put out their own video for their test rig, and it looks a lot more reasonable. Whether or not these hinges will last years, probably not. I seriously doubt they would. Especially once they start getting shoved into pockets and purses. Not so much. But when we look at Motorola's testing protocol, I feel like this is more reasonable. I agree with Motorola here. Looking at this, so it allows the screen to flip open to its completion, and then there's just a sort of an articulation joint that pops the screen back open and then closes it all the way. I don't feel the average Motorola RAZR user, which is a funny thing to say, the average user of a $1,500 vanity device, is going to be smashing their phone closed. So that looks like the way it should be used, and it looks like the way reasonably most people would aim to use it. I feel comfortable with that, and I feel like while there will be individual phones that fail much faster, there will be phones that probably last for years. The manufacturing differences from device to device to device on a first generation product from Motorola, yeah, we're going to see some drift and we're going to see some concerns. But that looks like the way we should test the hinge articulation on a device, not with an aggressive, shaky ratcheting action that CNET is trying to tell us is a reasonable way to use or to benchmark this type of durability. From Matt Tyler, this is exactly what we're going to talk about next, Matt. Well, Zach's video showed a lot more issues like the screen gap when folding. Absolutely true. And in book, I feel like the RAZR will last just as long as a Galaxy Fold in average use. We haven't had either of those devices for long enough to know whether or not it'll last for a year or more. But the first phone I ever got to use was a RAZR. Beautiful flip phone. So pretty. That's what we're going to move on to. Talking about how much torture we can put a device through. Zach, jerry rig everything. Here, let me drop the video for his here. So that's in the live chat. Yeah, he does his normal torture testy thing. Again, I feel like there's a lot that's coming on to be gadget destruction porn. But one of the things he does show He gets a good close-up on the hinge articulation mechanism. Very smart hinge design. It looks really good from just a pocketable consumer gadget. But he does show that there is a noticeable gap. The screen has to slide just a little, and as you're closing the phone, there's just this little bubble air gap as the phone is closing. So I don't like Zach's durability testing. Holding a lighter on a phone, purposely trying to bend against some of the weaker contact points, where antenna lines line up or where the volume rocker lines up. We're so far removed from the iPhone bending days that smartphone construction has gotten a lot better. So I feel like a lot of this just becomes ASMR gadget destruction. I'm going to rake a razor blade against the side casing of a phone with a super high-powered microphone so you can get that butt-puckering cringe of a sound effect as I break this gadget. So when he goes to do the reverse bend against the hinges on the RAZR, the hinges hold up phenomenally well. But applying so much force against a fragile plastic screen, there are lines broken into the display because of the components under the display. Okay, if you sit on a Motorola RAZR with the screen fully open against the hinges, you're going to destroy this phone. But again, I don't think that's going to be the major issue. And I feel like these are just the gadget destruction porn headlines for the Moto RAZR when, that Walmart display got destroyed on its first day, and you see like this poor little Moto RAZR display with the screen completely shredded. Yeah, that's going to happen. Same thing when iPhones bent, you'd go into an Apple store and you'd either see a bent iPhone or you'd see an iPhone under glass where they wouldn't let you touch the display. So again, I feel like there's a more reasonable middle ground here. The company I really want to see dig into the Moto RAZR would be iFixit. So I'm hoping we get a teardown, a really in-depth teardown from iFixit, because I would love to see what the guts of this phone are like. And I'd like to see the guts of the phone before someone purposely tries to break the phone. I'd like to see the guts fresh. Goran Petrovic, vanity phone. I liked that one. These are exactly that. and most flagships too. The S20, vanity. So Matt Tyler, I'm not trying to pick on you and I'm not trying to pick on Zach because his channel is fun. It's a fun channel. I agree with the lighter, but I think Zach's videos show construction weaknesses for how you store your phone, like in a bag, with weaker structure might not last as long being thrown around, just things to know. That's not how you test gadget durability. Intentionally applying force on a gadget at specific points, which your hands can't properly consistently balance that out. It's not like he's taking measurements to say this is exactly the midpoint, this is exactly where force on the volume rocker would be. He has a sample size of one gadget, and fingertip pressing hyper isolates where that pressure is going to be applied. If you've ever seen smartphone testing, I got to do a tour at Oppo. They actually test for what you're talking about. Like, I wear 501s. My jeans fit me, they're not baggy. So when I put a phone in a front pocket, it flexes and bends against my pocket in a different way than when I put my phone in my back pocket. So when you go to Oppo and you see they sacrifice hundreds of phones, batches of phones, almost every day doing drop testing. They do a tumbler where the phone is constantly cascading and it never really has a chance to stop. They do articulation drops where you put it on casters so that it perfectly lands on one corner, on one side, on the screen. It's not like a dumb drop test out on someone's street where it might hit a rock or it might just bounce into the grass. The one test that I absolutely love They do bend testing, and they do hyperarticulate bend testing where they put like a pin and then apply a ton of pressure on that one point. But the testing I like the most is their pocket testing, where they use rollers and fabric to bend against the device as it would flex in the pocket. If gadget destruction channels were doing stuff like that, I probably wouldn't be as concerned with this kind of commentary. But I don't think you learn a whole lot with some of these homegrown tests. I really feel like the appeal is, I got to see someone break a really expensive product in a will it blend kind of fashion. I'm really scratching at the display and really trying to, oh man, you can see my hands straining. But when it's your hands, you can't consistently apply force. You can't measure that and then know, as long as my fingers flex like this, I'm applying so many pounds of pressure per square inch. So you don't get a good glimpse of, from device to device to device, what really are the impacts. It really seems to me like if something starts to flex, he goes after that flex point, and if something's generally just doing fine, he kind of leaves it alone. That's not scientific. It's just entertaining. From Umbuk, the RAZR should last perfectly fine if you're careful with it. I mean, we need to let consumers know you need to be a lot more careful with it than a regular phone. Gary the Fireman, bottom line, glass is glass and glass breaks. That's my favorite quote from his. From Roth Suthi, so that's how they, from Roth, so that's how they emulate a butt sitting on it. And again, with some very simple pieces of machinery, we could probably go through that same process individually. But the problem is, once you start doing durability testing, you need a large sample size to get an accurate depiction of what might happen to a gadget. If I put this phone on rollers and casters and then flex fabric over it, internal mechanisms on this phone might be affected. So then if I take the same phone and go and do a drop test, this phone has already been compromised. You don't get a good understanding of how will this phone survive a drop if we've already done a flex test on it. So now I need two separate phones to break. And that's for every single individual criteria. How will this phone survive a corner drop versus a face drop versus a flat side drop? 4 phones. You just had to break 4 phones. How will that phone survive a drop at waist height versus at ear height? Now you need 16 phones. How will this phone survive a tumble down some stairs? Now you need 32 phones. You need to break 32 phones. And we haven't even gotten into hyper articulation point testing. They have fingers that constantly activate the screen and just sit there and type out random words so that they can make sure that the structure and the touchscreen sensitivity maintain over time. Already, just in the testing I've described from what I saw at Oppo, and they do this testing every single day. What is that? That's 16 and then 32. That's roughly 140 phones. 140 phones to test those different aspects and ramifications of durability. And they're maybe blowing through that in every major manufacturing center every day. That's what this really looks like. Not, I took one phone and I scratched it up a whole bunch and then I tried to break it with my hands. From Mbuku, we need Robo Butt. I love it. All right. So, but I'd check out Zach's video for the RAZR because I do think it brings up some of the durability issues for specific kinds of use. Like I was describing, I would highly recommend against trying to game on a folding phone. Because when I'm playing like Tesla versus Lovecraft and my thumbs are really moving my little robot mech around and I'm fragging all of these eldritch horror monsters, I'm holding that phone very aggressively. And I doubt that a plastic screen device is going to last very long at all under a moderate version of that use. But as a basic communicator, it's probably fine. I just don't think $1,500 for a basic communicator is going to be as appealing to a number of consumers out there. Let me get this out of the way here. Matt Tyler, Asus ROG Fold 1. Nope. I mean, again, you want to talk about companies that are going to jump on trends. I will be very surprised. You know, I almost want to put, I will donate. I'm trying to do the math in my head. What can I afford to donate? I will donate $100. I know I can safely make that claim. I will donate $100 to the charity of this live stream's choice. We'll vote on different charities. If Asus comes out with an ROG branded, ROG, not a Zenfone, an ROG phone gaming folding device before the end of 2021. Okay? You guys have to hold me to this because now that I've said those words out loud, I'll probably forget that I ever made this promise. But Asus ROG branded device folding before the end of 2021, and I'll donate $100 to the charity of your choice. If we make it to the end of 2021 and that hasn't come to pass, then everyone needs to pick a charity and donate $1 to a charity of their choice. And I'll still probably donate $100 to a charity of my choice. The win here is that you get to pick the charity and not me. I'll still donate because we still donate a lot of money to charities. Matt Tyler, I've given you enough time to save $100. All right, I've saved the best for last. Obviously, they're the most talked about, the most impressive. Everyone loves their devices. Never a critical word based on their advertising. Always fairly looking at the manufacturing. We got a tease. We got a leak. I've covered some other iPhone and Samsung leaks. I'm not a big fan of covering leaks and rumors, but this popped out in a really interesting way and seems to confirm some of the design criticisms we've had with LG products in the past. I scoured the tech landscape to find an article that didn't just immediately criticize LG for not being the most popular manufacturer. So I couldn't stay with some of the more popular blogs because mixed in this leak and rumor reporting were their editorializing commentary on, well, LG's never done anything right though. You're like, okay, cool. Settle down. It's a leak. And when we leak Samsung stuff, you don't bring up the Note 7 exploding. So again, there's a disparity in tone. And again, not surprising that when I talk to some of these other reviewers and they complain about people not coming to their websites or their YouTube channels to listen to their LG commentary, might be part of the reason why. I'm just spitballing. Maybe don't make everything the tragedy of the smaller manufacturer, and you probably build a little bit more traffic from people that are genuinely interested in those devices. But I digress. Matt Tyler, what? Note 7? Samsung never made a Note 7. So the article I found comes by way of India Today. I'm going to mispronounce his name so bad, and I apologize. But from Shubham Verma, LG V60. I'm sorry. It just cracked me up that it took me this long to... it was a difficult finding this article. LG V60 ThinQ tipped to come with 4 cameras and a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. The leaked image that we got seems to be from some kind of internal or press video where they're showing these graphics. One of the things that this shows off really well is a new microphone array, which is going to be coming to the V60, a quad 4-channel microphone array, where if you've ever recorded or you ever have produced from an LG phone, they took the mantle from old school Nokia. Old school Nokia had these multiple microphone arrays with sort of these dual channel elements. So you would have a high impact mode if stuff got loud, and you'd have sort of a regular human speech mode. Nokia mics are still second to none for mobile devices. If you can pick up like a Lumia 1520 or a Lumia 930, I have concert footage from those phones that I cannot upload to YouTube because it trips, Content ID filters. I mean, it's just phenomenally good audio. And I really feel like one of the only companies to fulfill, to continue on that path. I mean, obviously HMD is doing great work. The Nokia 9, great mics on the Nokia 9, and they're directional. But LG, absolutely stunning. You can, as a good example, check out my One More review, the One More true wireless ANC earbuds. I take a little sample of the Bluetooth feed from the microphones on the One More, and I compare that against the audio that just came straight out of my LG V60. And it's night and day. I mean, what the LG V50 can do to capture human speech in an open air neighborhood environment is stunning and beautiful. But I digress again. Back to the V60. It looks like the V60 is going to be improving on what makes the LG V50 such a solid choice. 4 microphone array. You can see, I can't really blow up this image any more than this. Let me try. I don't know if it's really going to get bigger though. Oh, kinda. Yeah, a little bit. Okay. So the 4 microphone array, and then at the very bottom, you can kind of see just the littlest half moon cutout on the bottom edge of the phone where a beautiful, useful, functional, standard connector known as the headphone jack is going to go. And again, if you care about your ears, LG is the only game left with high quality, really high quality audiophile grade headphone support. And it's just beautiful. I've got Sennheiser 599s on my desk. I've got Beyerdynamic DT770s. The only phone that can properly drive decent cans is an LG. But what you can't see as easily is it's very, very faded in the battery cutout behind this 4-channel microphone graphic, is that this phone looks like it's going to be coming with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. LG's been tagged, along with like Sony, a number of manufacturers, for not instantly immediately putting in the biggest batteries that they possibly could. From the G7 on, I think battery performance has been upper mid-pack. Reasonable. Totally fine for daily driver use. Gets a little lean when you really start driving those cameras. LG cameras are great, but camera performance sucks down battery life. And last year with the G8 and with the V50, especially the G8X, once we made that move to a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, man, LG battery numbers got real good. I mean, top of the pack, super competitive against iPhones and Galaxies, comparing reasonably spec to spec to spec to spec, LG was totally in it. An LG V50 with a Snapdragon 865 and some of the power management improvements that we hope to see from this next generation Samsung, with a 25% larger battery than the V50, should be phenomenal. That'll turn into a 2-day gadget for me, and I use these things pretty aggressively. So I'm very curious. I'm very excited to see what the V60 is going to bring. I think it's going to be a lot of the same look. Like, I don't think they're really going to change the design language. It's a glass slab. There's not much you can do left. The Note looks like every other Note. The Galaxy S looks like every other Galaxy S. LGs look like every other LGs. I'm not... Anyone who's out there complaining, oh, they're not innovative enough because they needed to do something magic with the design of the phone, is not good at tech. Like, they're not. If that's your big criticism, then you suck at tech. I feel like that's fair. The other thing that I think is going to be kind of interesting, again, I can screen share this. I can't really blow it up any better. But it looks like the camera array is also going to get some kind of refresh. I'm not sure what LG's going to do. This is where I'm a little worried as a camera snob. I'm hoping we get some kind of upgraded sensor. But LG is usually pretty conservative about that. It took them a while from the V10 to the V50 to really get on board the current slate of sensor technology, they were almost always like one generation behind, but they would be able to do incredible things with a slightly older sensor. So like the V30 had more of like an iPhone style 3rd inch sensor. I mean, maybe it was like 1 over 2.8. I can't remember exactly what that sensor size was, but it took to the V40 to get us properly into this 1 over 2.5. I'd love to at least see LG move over to a true 1/2 inch. I don't know that they will. I think we'll probably get one more generation of the regular 12 megapixel sensor that we've been using for a while, since the Galaxy S7. But in this array, there seems to be a 4th sensor. And my hypothesis would be that there's some kind of depth tracking. So we'll have the standard standard camera view, which is usually somewhere around like a 24 millimeter equivalent. Then we'll have an ultra wide. Then we'll have a zoom sensor. And then I'm really hoping they're going to start using some of the depth tracking as a separate camera sensor, a time of flight sensor, like we saw on the Nokia 9. So that would be my hope. This kind of horsepower, these kinds of video features, amazing audio capture capabilities with headphone monitoring, and the ability to better control for things like depth of field blur in both photos and videos. That could be fun. That could be really exciting. Everyone out there who reviews phones will say it's not enough and they need to do more and they need to charge less and they need to make me a ham sandwich. But I'm looking really positive. V60 is looking really solid if this stuff actually comes true, if this actually comes to pass. From Blue Malicious, I really hope it comes out here in the UK. Same with Matt. Yeah, Matt Tyler and Blue Malicious in the UK. Unfortunately, I'm not sure LG's distribution is going to be much better than it was last year. They took a bad beat on the V50 with 5G, and the carriers that were interested in supporting those products, I mean, we're still waiting on the Android 10 update for Sprint. It's out. It's ready. Android 10 on the V50 is awesome. But we got to go through a carrier, so that's super lame. I'm worried that we're probably in for another shaky year for the markets that actually get these LG devices. But we can hope, fingers crossed, that we get some kind of at least better distribution, or at least unlocked distribution for a couple other regions that don't get to play with these as much. And Matt Tyler saying Sony might be bringing back the headphone jack. I'm really hoping that we get that Xperia 1.1. There was that sort of leak of an Xperia 5 that was supposed to get it back too. I want to see that in international distribution though. Oh, and a fun conversation. People talking about Sony headphone performance versus HTC. Like, again, LG seemed to pick up on technologies that other companies just dumped. You know, microphone recording capability, LG phenomenally picked up on what Nokia sort of left off with. For headphone performance, HTC started us off on a conversation where you would isolate the headphone performance from the rest of the circuit board of the phone. You'd include a different kind of DAC and a different amp than what just came stock with a Qualcomm chipset. And then HTC dropped the ball by going to a dongle and just murdering one of the key differentiators for HTC devices. And who picked it up? LG. So again, it's like LG is ahead of the curve on some features and gimmicks that people don't want to give them credit for, like, you know, air gestures and split screening and flexible OLEDs, and I'm missing some stuff. Dual screen devices, folding phones, stuff like that. Yeah, LG ahead on those. They're always called gimmicks when LG does them. But then LG also seems to be the place where good ideas go to die. They were the last manufacturer to hold out on a removable battery. They were one of the last, especially in the North American market, to hold out on IR blasters. They're still the only manufacturer I know of that lists durability reports for mil-spec. You know, I don't think a glass-on-glass phone is going to be much more survivable from a Samsung or from an LG, but LG at least pays to certify their devices as mil-spec 810G. So that's something. But then we look at the headphone jack. They're the last ones to still hold on to the headphone jack. It's just funny when we look at all of those different ideas that have kind of gone away, but LG was the last to hold on to them. It's funny. A little sad, but mostly funny. From Goran Petrovic, LG is the spiritual HTC successor when it comes to audio. Just solve the speaker issues. Actually, I mean, the V50 was solid there too. The G8X wasn't bad either. I would love to just get back to true stereo speakers though. So many. I mean, like, even when the phone advertises stereo speakers, it's almost always unbalanced. I'm trying to think. I think the RAZR. Yeah, the RAZR Phone 2 might have been the last true balanced stereo speaker phone I've ever used. Because I think after that, then it just becomes a bigger speaker on the bottom and then an overdriven earpiece speaker at the top. And that sounds terrible for stereo, like the actual left-right separation, but it sounds pretty good as a woofer and a tweeter. You know, like if it were just mono, but high frequencies coming out of the earpiece and low frequencies coming out of the bottom, that works okay. I like that. From Mbuk, we want a quad DAC and a Pixel 4a. Yeah, I mean, again, it's helpful. I love having a headphone jack on the Pixel 3a. It is not an audiophile headphone jack. From Matt Tyler, my review on the LG V50 had speaker issues. Okay. I mean, I got the phone back from you and it sounds fine. I mean, I can put it up against some other devices where it's not quite as full or it's not quite as rich or it's not quite as lush, but it's kind of just normal smartphone performance for speakers. Of course, you were also coming from an Asus ROG. So even though those speakers aren't quite balanced, they're much more powerful. So I would not allow the Asus ROG Phone 2 to color your perception of what normal smartphone speakers sound like. So you're sort of like one of the top options for that kind of playback. From Blue Malicious, I actually prefer the mono speaker on my G7 to my dual speakers on the Pixel 2. And one of the cool things, I still think the G7 is the best for their boombox feature. So every other phone technically has boombox on LG, the G8, on the V40, on the V50, but the G7. Boombox is this resonance chamber. You put the phone down on a flat surface and it turns that flat surface into a reverberation point. You can put it on an empty box and it fills that box to act kind of like a low frequency boost. And it sounds really, really good on the G7, but the effect is much more minimized on the G8 and the V50. To the point where, I mean, like there are a couple other phones that just sort of vibrate when the speaker gets loud and it sounds pretty close. Not exactly the same, but pretty close to what LG was able to do with boombox mode. It's just funny, like, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have true stereo speakers, a resonance chamber on the back of the phone, and that quad DAC headphone jack. And I think we'd have the real successor to a phone like the HTC M8. You know, like it would make me very happy to have all of that ear candy in one device. So yeah, it's funny stuff. From Boom Malicious, the boombox sounds fantastic and it makes your voice sound a lot more realistic when I listen to the podcast. Again, I mean, like, I wish I could pick up some ad dollars, you know, like I would stop reviewing LG phones to pick up some LG sponsorships just to talk about this stuff more. This podcast brought to you by the wonderful LG V60. Check out the 4-microphone recording channel. Use promo code SomeGadgetGuy to get a free dual screen at time of purchase. This podcast not brought to you by LG. Well, folks, we're right at 2 hours, 10:54. We did it. We're going to wrap this up now. Like I said, all of the show notes, all of the links, all of the stories that we talked about this week will be on the podcast wherever you download podcasts. You want to pick it up that way. And then also on SomeGadgetGuy.com for the show notes for the actual podcast show link. You can catch all of the commentary that's going to be coming out. I'm going to have that iPhone review out soon. More audio products. Another set of headphones are going to be reviewed over the weekend. A hashtag 2020 video coming. But I do have to warn you, there's going to be some disruption to the channel over the next 2 weeks as my family sorts out a move and then also resetting up a new studio. So it's going to get a little hairy. So fair warning, some of these videos and podcasts are going to look a little funky or sound a little different. It's because we're in the process of gutting all of this stuff to try and move our family to a new place. So I appreciate not only your continued support and conversation, but also your patience as we go through some technical difficulties. Folks, thanks so much for watching. And again, it's just so much fun being able to interact and check out this amazing live stream. Tell some friends, bring some more folks over if they're cool. If they're lame, let them keep commenting on YouTube where they normally comment. But if they're cool, bring them on over. Let's have some fun conversations because this is exactly the stuff that I started tech reviewing for, was to get into these types of discussions. And you guys make me look good every week. I mean, really, truly. Men and women and tech fans of all persuasions make me look really good every week with the types of conversations that we get into. Folks, I'm gonna put a pin in it. You know where you can catch me over the week on social media. SomeGadgetGuy, Juan Bagnell on YouTube, but you can find me as SomeGadgetGuy. We're gonna have some Newegg content coming out. I'm gonna be doing a shoot with them too. So some more gaming and PC building news gonna be coming out from there. I might live tweet the Samsung Unpacked event, but I have so much work. I might just have it on in the background. I'm not seriously considering doing anything heavy, like reactions or impressions or anything like that. But if you want to join me, let me know, and maybe we can just make it kind of like an MST3K live tweet of Samsung trying to impress us with folding phones. That could happen. That could be cool. It could be fun. Maybe we'll do that. And then, of course, you know where you can find me. Next week, we're going to have another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel, twitch.tv/SomeGadgetGuy, YouTube after the show broadcasts live. And I hope you'll join me. I hope you'll continue to engage in some of these discussions and get out there and support your favorite content creators. If that's on glowing rectangles on the subreddit, awesome, beautiful. Thank you so much for participation. But just in general, finding those opportunities to help spread the word on good content any way you can, anywhere you can, is always greatly appreciated. Reviews on podcast services, shares on Reddit and social media, comments, likes, thumbs ups, anything more than just passively consuming the content and then demanding more with grabby hands helps fulfill your favorite content creators. I hope you'll continue being the amazing, the incredible supporters of awesome content. Folks, I'm going to catch you back next week. Have a fantastic week with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your tech. I want you to be awesome with your tech. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the podcast. I love you all. Take care. Be well. I'll catch you back.